we're not just babysitters.
Right. Come on, say it.
We are the professionals.
Can you say it a little louder for the people in the back?
Can you hear me? We are not babysitters.
That's right.
So just making sure that we pour into our teachers, making sure that we're checking in. And a lot of times as administrators, they're coming in because they have all of the aspect, everything, the papers and everything that they have to deal with and all of that stuff like that. But making sure that we check in because as I've said, and I'll say time and time again, our teachers are the frontline workers. Yeah. And so just a simple thank you, a certificate, acknowledging that I see you and I appreciate everything that you're doing.
Me, Coach Stacey B, and I want to welcome you to the Childcare Teachers Chronicles, where we are discussing all things related to childcare teachers. It is important that they have a voice in our workforce. As we know, there is no work in America without childcare teachers. There are no childcare centers without childcare centers. So this is the platform to make sure that their voices are heard and they are supported. I am here today with Coach E, and we are going to be discussing emotional and mental health. Coach E is the perfect person to have this discussion. Why? Because she has worked every aspect of the child care centers.
Yes,
Am I correct?
Correct.
Do you want to give them a little bit about where you started as to where you are right now?
Of course. Well, right now I am in education administration, but I have been in all aspects. I've been the teacher, I've been the para, I've been all of the things. So I know just a little bit about things that teachers go through, the stresses that our teachers go through.
Yes, and so I think that's very important for us to highlight that. I often say to some of my child care partners or counterparts, I can relate to my teachers because I have worked every aspect of this career. When I tell them it's time to do something, when I tell them you can do it, when I tell them we can formulate this, I can get in there and show them because that is something I have done. Along with that also come those stressors though. So I want to ask you, how does your job impact emotional and mental health?
Well, we as child care teachers, early learning professionals, I think of it as we are all project managers, okay? And because if you look at each child in your classroom, that's a particular project. When we're looking at the business side of it. And so not only is just that child, you have to think of all of the things that that child is bringing. And not only this child, because the child and its family. So that's a whole project in itself. And so let's say if you have 17 different little people in your classroom, that's 17 different projects that you have to balance. And so that's a juggling act. And that can be extremely stressful as that early learning teacher.
So that sounds like, as you said, I'll use your example, 17 children in one classroom. That sounds like that's the daily stressors that they go through, right?
Yes.
And I've heard this from childcare teachers before. When they have to juggle so many personalities and attitudes, sometimes the teachers check out and say, these children got me fucked up, right? So they have to figure out a way to regulate their emotions, regulate their stress management, and be able to implement a successful day for those children. So give me some of the ideas or some of the things that you do in your center or in your work environment or when you're coaching a team, how they help to regulate those stressors throughout the day.
Of course, number one, identifying all of the stresses. A lot of times we don't know what it is. Like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. Why are you so stressed out? It's not just the children.
Right.
Because a lot of times, yes, we have, and I did say, we have 17 little, different babies, but we know the little children. Yes. We know what milestones they're hitting. But when we walk in, we also have to look at what the administrator, when they're coming in, we have to make sure that we are in compliance. We know that we have people coming in to measure how you're teaching in the classroom. And so it's a lot of times it's unannounced, and so you have to always be ready. You always have to just be in that moment of just trying to make it happen. And so identifying, okay, yes, we have the children. We also have the adults. We have their families and what they're bringing in. We have the administrators and all of the paperwork that goes with it. And so making sure that we categorize and not put everything in one basket and just taking off that list.
Well, what you're saying is very, very important. And let me highlight this, because I don't want you all to miss some of this, right? Oftentimes child care teachers are looked at as just babysitters, right?
Yes.
They're looked at as people who just sit and watch children all
That's
day.
not what we do.
To be a professional in this industry,
Yes.
we actually have to teach these children. And in order for us to teach them and pour into, we have to teach ourselves.
Yes.
So one thing you
correct.
named, outside of just the children and all of the personalities and all of their activities, is the responsibility of the teachers and the adults, right? There are so many things that a teacher needs to be in compliance with, right?
Yes.
Outside of that, then you have these different groups and observers coming in, observing them and sitting over them and watching them, and in a sense judging them or grading them, and that adds to their stress,
It
right?
does.
So how can we ensure that the child care teacher can also regulate those stresses, see them for what they are, categorize them, and not allow it to cause them to go overboard in their emotions and their mental?
Yes. Okay. So one thing, child care teachers, early learning professionals, you are enough. Yeah. Let's start there. Before you walk in the building, because you have your own stresses going on at home, you are more than enough. And you're just showing up every day. And I thank you for your time. I thank you for your commitment.
Yeah,
so just to know that you are appreciated and valued. The work that we're doing, we're not just babysitters.
Right. Come on, say it.
We are the professionals.
Can you say it a little louder for the people in the back?
Can you hear me? We are not babysitters.
That's right.
So just making sure that we pour into our teachers, making sure that we're checking in. And a lot of times as administrators, they're coming in because they have all of the aspect, everything, the papers and everything that they have to deal with and all of that stuff like that. But making sure that we check in because, as I've said, and I'll say it time and time again, our teachers are the frontline workers.
Yeah.
And so just a simple thank you, a certificate, acknowledging that I see you and I appreciate everything that you're doing.
So what you're bringing up now brings me to my next point. Creating a positive work environment, right?
Yeah.
Would that help improve mental well-being at work, that work-life balance? How do we make sure that we are creating this? I know for me, one of the things, and you're aware because you are going to thankfully grace the stage at our Child Care Teacher Reset Retreat. Thank you. But one of the reasons that stood out to me, as you all know, I am a multi-center owner, right? And what we have done for years is a center-wide retreat. We would go somewhere out of town, somewhere close, somewhere a little further, and we would do training, but I will make sure my teachers retreat typically somewhere where a beach is at or a pool is at, so they can just kind of let their hair down, unwind, right?
Yes.
And this year, when I was planning our retreat, I'm gonna say the Lord spoke to me, because I feel like
let him use you.
Yeah, most of my direction comes from the Lord speaking to me, right? I feel like He was telling me it needs to be bigger. It needs to be better.
Yes.
We need to service the masses in this, right?
It's not just about your team.
It's not just about my team, right? Because my team can only service what we can, our handful of people, right? So what I decided to do this year was do a big retreat for child care teachers, a child care teacher reset retreat, right?
Yes.
And this retreat is a place for for teachers to come and learn, but for them to also relax, meet other teachers, see that you are not alone, build relationships is so important when we provide them spaces like this, right?
Yes.
So my question in this kind of segment of it is, how are we making sure we're creating a positive work environment that helps offset that balance of that emotional and mental stress?
Thank you so much, Stacey, for, answering the call.
Thank you.
And listening and understanding that it's not just about your team. And of course, the things that you're doing with your team, that's perfect and that's understandable. But we have to make sure that all of the teachers across all of the various child care centers, if it's a private, if it's Head Start or whatever, that they're still being appreciated and that they're still getting all of the knowledge, because there's a lot of knowledge. And we need to make sure that if we want our teachers to do better, we have to make sure that we're pouring into them. And so creating this space, because, you know, within the few years that I've been in education and early childhood, and even when I worked in big school, and if there were professional development sessions that I would just, and my, you know, my kindergarten teacher friends and my counterparts, my pre-K, we're just sitting in the room just to show up so we won't get fined.
Right.
So making sure that it's a safe place.
Right.
Where we're pouring into our teachers, and making sure that the people who are in the room and having these conversations have the knowledge to share, because once our teachers go back and they're resetting and they're going back into the classroom, we want them to go back feeling that I could do this. I have the tools. We talked about effective communication. We talked about that social and emotional piece, because it's not just about the babies, it's about me as the professional.
Right.
So making sure that we have those groups and creating, not just when we have the retreat, but having those conversations, and prayerfully that the directors, that they're coming on board as well, so they could see and they could take it back to their centers, and they could have their teachers having those reflective times, and start practicing reflective supervision. So as the director's like, okay, I need to do this and let's spend this time so we could continually do better. So, I'm excited,
So, again, in creating a positive work environment, a few things stood out for me that I wanted to be sure we highlighted. In doing so, we are helping that work-life balance. We are giving appreciation and recognition is a big thing in creating that positive work environment. A lot of times teachers not going to tell you what they did or how they did it or why they did it, but it's very important for you to see it, right? As the owner, it's very important for you to see it as a director. It's very important for them to get the acknowledgement, right? Teachers go so much harder and feel so much better when they feel like their work isn't in vain. And then also building a supportive community. Things like this retreat or retreats like this embodies all of that.
Yes.
One thing I've done for a very long time, and people thought I was crazy, I would take my whole team to conferences, right? And it is a task. A lot of owners or directors, you know, feel that they can't do it because it is a financial task, right?
Yes.
But my team would do fundraisers. They will match funds. If they pay a certain amount, I'll pay a certain amount. And what I found is my teachers were so much more enthused coming back to work. They love to be in the building with other people.
Yes.
They love to show out and rep It Takes a Village Academy. They love to speak well on us, and they love to look good together. Right? When we would show up in other places, people would be like, there go It Takes a Village. And it did something for them. It was a high, right? And so after that weekend or those few days were over, they came back and was so much more effective in the child care center, right?
Ready to go.
A part of building and working on their mental and emotional stressors is making sure we are giving them platforms to shine, giving them ways to feel included and feel well. So in doing so, give me some other ideas that you all have tried or have done with your team and your staff, or even you coaching as Coach E, some things that you have allowed or shared with other centers to do and pour into their teams.
That investment, you know, with you saying that you bringing your whole team to a conference. And so that's an investment. Having that, knowing that your director, your supervisor sees you and wants you at the same table with you so you can learn it. I don't just have to bring all of this information back. That's key. And so just to know that you see me. And I could show up, and like how you said, I could go even harder. Making sure that when we go back, we have those weekly conversations, checking in on the check-ins to see like what worked, what didn't work. Because I know what the conversation that's going on right now, a lot of my teachers are saying that, oh wow, this year, this was different. This was a different year. And so giving my teachers that opportunity to have those conversations in a safe space. So we could just continue to move forward. So creating those safe spaces and continuing with those safe spaces and with the affinity groups, and just acknowledging, even if, you know, of course, with observations, Even if there was just, if we went up 1 point or a half a point, acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times if it's an observation and the teachers are coming in, it may be a day that one little person is not, they really want to show up and do what they do best.
Right.
But still acknowledging.
Yeah.
And not beating our teachers down and just lifting them up still.
So what I'm gathering out of what you're saying is bring it back to the basics. The same thing we ask the teachers do for the children, observe them, document them, acknowledge them, give them their praises. We also, as owners and directors, need to do for our teachers. Observe them, document them, give them their praises. And that I say that because as leaders, we have to be able to check in when one of our teachers are not right.
Do.
And we need to be able to pick that up, right?
And see it.
So
hey, be there. Be present. We as the administrators, as the leaders, we have to be present.
Yeah.
And not just on paper. The teachers need to see you. We need to go into the classroom, not when if I have my clipboard and I'm ready to observe it to tell you what you're not doing. Sometimes I'm just walking through. And a lot of times, and I might not even say anything. I don't need to say anything because everything is a beautiful scene. It's organized chaos. We have little people doing what they need to do. The voices are at a certain level. No one's screaming. No one's fighting. And so I'm just walking through. But I also want to make sure that I acknowledge that teacher. And I remember one of my coaches, what she did for me, and I needed it that day. She did a walkthrough. Mm-hmm. And she came and she put a Post-it on my door to let me know that she saw what I was doing. And I needed that. And I still have that note to this day. And that's been over probably 7 years. And I still have that one note. So when I feel like I'm not showing up and I'm not good enough, I still refer back to that note.
Yeah.
And so acknowledging our teachers. And it doesn't always have to be big.
There you go.
Canva is your best friend. You can make a certificate for everything and just acknowledge that. And I have so many teachers, they'll tell me, Miss E, that certificate, you just acknowledging that I needed that in that moment. And
those small gestures
it's just
go
the
a
little
long
things.
way. Yes, absolutely. And so in speaking more about the top of the chain,
yes,
how do we regulate ourselves to make sure we're showing up as the best? We have to lead by example, right?
Yes.
And so again, that work-life balance, how do we make sure that we are showing up as the best, that we are able to be an example, display what we want our teachers to be able to facilitate? What do you tell those who you work with in your coaching program, or those teachers who you train with? How do you help them to see this through your lens?
Showing up as the professional, number one.
As a professional.
We have to be the professional. I will say professional. The word of the day is professional.
The word of the day is what? Professional.
So as the director, I have to show up as professional. Of course, I have to act the part. I have to look the part. I have to know my part. I have to know what I need to do.
But what happens if you don't feel like it that day?
You know what?
Like life been life with you,
life
and
is
you don't
always
feel like it.
Life is always life.
How do you check life to show up as the professional?
And I have to. And so what I have to do, a lot of times before I walk in, I make sure that I turn my music on in my car. Of course, I get my turned up music, but there are times when I have to get it together.
Put your praise on.
I got to get it, because being a leader, it's a task. And of course, we make it look good. You make it look good. But it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that we have that balance. Yeah. We check our emotions at the door. And so regardless of what, if the baby, did not go to sleep last night, I need to make sure that he's fine, Yeah. But I have to check myself before I go in and making sure that I'm able to put on the straight and brave face.
Right.
So I can model for my teachers, because if Coach G is walking in looking like a Tasmanian devil, like, oh Lord, if she's not, she's stressed, because I always tell them, don't worry about it. If you see me stressing, that's when you need to stress.
Right.
So just making sure that I check myself, and also making sure that we have boundaries put in place.
Yeah.
We need boundaries.
So when you say boundaries, what do you mean?
Oh, now I have do not disturb on my phone at night. between the hours of 10 and 5:30, because before I would have calls throughout the day, throughout the night. And I'm like, if it's an emergency, baby, call 911.
Right.
Give me some time, because if I'm always pouring into you,
right,
how am I supposed to pour into myself and also to my family as well?
Right.
So making sure that we have those safe boundaries, and letting people, it's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no. I don't think people realize how beneficial for your mental and emotional health it is to just say no. No.
Just say no.
No,
just
I'm not. No. I can't. I won't. I remember at one point I was so stressed out. When I first started owning my center, I was working. Yes. I had 2 small children. My daughter was newborn. My son was 1 year old. And I remember I caught the flu, right? And I stayed sick for about 2 weeks for the flu, and then I got over it. And then I got the flu again, right? Well, then for the next 2 months, I ran a low-grade fever and had chills every day. I lost 40 pounds in those 2 months. Doctor visit after doctor visit, everything was fine. Only thing they knew was I had some kind of infection.
Yeah.
Hospital visit after hospital visit. My mama finally said, we're going to go to University Hospital. For those who know hood hospitals, there's always a
university.
That's the ones who
a county hospital.
Yes. So we went to University Hospital, and she said, we're not going to leave here until we get an answer. I stayed in the emergency room half the day. When they came to discharge me, my fever spiked. They had the discharge papers in their hands, and my fever spiked, and the doctor said, we're going to admit you. I stayed in the hospital for 10 days.
10 days.
I went to 2 hospitals. I was in one hospital for 6 days. They transferred me to another one for 4 because they couldn't find nothing in the first 6 days. So they said, let's send her here. Maybe they could find something, right? Of course. My mom finally came in and said, discharge her. She looked sicker. Y'all not finding nothing wrong. Y'all keep running the same test. Every time I come in the room, it's dark. She's getting more depressed. She's sinking and sinking. I could take my baby home, right?
Yes.
She took me home and started nursing me back to health. Finally, one of my doctors called and said, Miss Stacey, I need you to come in. I believe we know what was wrong. I'm like, let's go. Let me find this out.
Finally.
Am I dying? What's been festering? What's been happening? I walked in that man's office. He sat me down. He said, you are overworked and overstressed. Out of every test we ran, everything came back normal. We can't figure out what keeps causing your temperature to spike, but we believe it's because you are overworked and overstressed.
Yes.
That was one of the moments when I realized I had to start saying no.
Yes, and delegating.
I remember I got home after that. I would sit on my couch, front door open, screen door shut, and people would ring my doorbell, and I would sit there and look at them. And I'd turn my attention back to TV and not move. I had to start setting boundaries for my life. And so in saying that, I want to talk about this last topic really quick and make sure we get this in. But what are some support and resources that you feel are beneficial towards helping teachers or childcare, the childcare arena as a whole, kind of work through emotional and mental health?
Yes. So at least what we could do on a day-to-day basis, just for administrators, to make sure that we have some type of tap-out policy. If you see that teacher coming in, if she's walking through the door, and I have several teachers, and I see it on their face because the weight of the world is weighing on their shoulders, and I'm going in like, do you need a moment? Like, you know what? I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, you need a moment.
Yeah.
So I have your class. I step in because, of course, I've been that educator. I'm the teacher. Look, I could show you how. I could run it. I could change that baby diaper. I could wash my hands, put 2 hair nets on my head, and go in the kitchen and sling these plates for these babies. That's what we do. But I have my 2 hair nets on, and that's fine. But I step in and I see it because we have to make sure that we're not so caught up in the day-to-day that I don't pay attention to the people, to the teacher, to the person. You're not, before you're a teacher, before you're a professional, you are a person, you are a human being. And so we have to make sure that I see you and showing up.
So are there some different resources or access to mental health in your area that you would refer a teacher to, or you yourself, speak about being a part of? Because sometimes people won't do it unless they see us doing it, right? So are there some agencies or businesses where you feel, or even some counselors, that can show up or be a support for teachers?
Well, it's time for us to shine the light on advocacy for that mental health for our teachers. So creating those those spaces, making sure that there are professionals in the room that are available. And so when we're having these trainings, these professional development, it's not always, okay, look, this is what we have to do and this is that, but actually having those counselors come in and having the opportunities to talk with teachers. So there are a lot of resources that are available, but we need to make sure that as directors that we have those resources. We make sure that our teachers, if we have the counseling available through like your emergency assistance program, if you have you have those benefits, to make sure that they have those times.
Okay.
And so I know that there are several agencies that offer, and they make it mandatory that their teachers go talk with someone in a confidential manner.
Yes, and so also we have to look at peer and administrative support. I know one of the things I started doing years ago with my center was closing every third Friday of the month.
Yes.
And when I started doing this, centers was like, oh my God, what you doing? The parents gonna leave? I can't. No. Yes, you can, because there is so much required of these child care teachers, from the documentation, from the observation, from the lesson plans, to getting their room turned around and getting their arts changed out. And this too is not enough hours in their work day. It's not fair to our teachers to have to go home and do these things, right? So we had to create a space every third Friday of the month. Our centers are closed, but that allows us to have peer and administrative support. That allows us to have professional development. And what we do is we see what's needed. We don't just offer whatever professional development that's in our local agencies. If I see our teachers or our team is missing something or needing something, even that mental and emotional wellness aspect, that's what the professional development is on. So to wrap this up and to kind of bring this back full circle, as a part of early education, we are dealing with real life humans dealing with real life humans, right?
Yes.
And we do know we're not oblivious to some of the things that happen in the world, right? Yes. So that's why we need to advocate for more funding and more support for mental health and wellness for child care teachers, because as we said, child care teachers are what?
The professionals and the frontline workers.
The professionals and the frontline workers. So I want to wrap this up with giving a huge thank you to you for being here, Coach E. Is there something you want to be sure your audience know about you, or where to find you, or anything that you can do to help shine a little bit more light on this topic?
Well, just stay tuned. Coach E, I've been around for a while. And I'm still here, but just stay tuned. There's going to be more to come.
All right, you heard it from her mouth. This is Coach Stacey B. I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Childcare Teacher Chronicles, where we talk about all things related to the childcare teachers. We want to make sure we're shining a light on their point of view. I am going to tell you to like, comment, and subscribe so you can get the good juice from us. I'll talk to you later.